Hello and welcome to the agenda on Labour Social with me, Graham Hughes, and my co-host, Phil Morehouse. How you doing, Phil?
Morning. Afternoon. Actually, where are we? It is afternoon.
It's 1 o'clock.
Yes, I've lost all sense of time going through all the data this morning.
Were you up till 4?
No. Although I did
wasn't.
wake up very early and noticed there was some. Was it in Wellingborough? There was some to do. I was quite tired with like 10 votes that had gone missing, as if 10 votes are going to matter, but you know, they have to be proper. I mean, Wellingborough was quite spectacular because Labour got more actual votes yesterday than they did in the general election.
Wow.
So the general election.
By-election.
Yes. More in the actual number of votes was greater, not just the proportion of votes. The number of votes exceeded the general election total.
It's the second largest swing to Labour from the Tories since the Second World War.
Yes. Yeah, in what you might call like modern political history. Because before then, of course, Labour would have had huge swings in its early days. But yeah, in terms of once it had settled down, second largest. Not very far off the largest.
Yeah, we've got a lot of excitement in the chat. The morning brew this morning was absolutely phenomenal. All buoyed up by that. Although I think things are going to be tempered a little bit by the terrible news coming out of Russia that Alexei Navalny has been murdered in jail by Putin's thugs.
But I mean, from most points of view, it was inevitable, and also murdered or just locked up in a dungeon, whatever. He was, making sure he was out of it.
Yeah,
I mean that's what Russia is. It's ridiculous that.
But that's the future that some people want for this country. Some people want it for America. They want.
Well, it's because they think these what they
opponents.
call strong leaders, these authoritarian leaders, will be on their side. They will never be on their side. They're never on anyone's side. They're on their own side.
Yeah. So we'll talk about more later on the Labour Social, but we'll just concentrate on the by-election now. For now. In Kingswood and Wellingborough. So, I mean, is there any copium here for the Tories? I saw Rees-Mogg saying, but the defeat wasn't as bad as we thought it would be. They didn't get over 50% of the vote.
It was worse than they thought it would be. In fact, if we go through a couple, let's go. So first of all, one thing I was noting is, there's 3 excuses that they've been using for these by-election defeats traditionally, because this is now their 9th and 10th by-election defeat this parliament, which is now a record going back to the 1960s. I wasn't even born then. My parents were children. So it doesn't normally happen, but their usual excuses are, midterm blues. But there's no real love for Starmer or Labour or whatever, a variation of that. And, our voters stayed at home. Now, in reality, the midterm blues one now has to disappear because it can't be midterm blues. We're 76 days away from the election. And even if they still persist with this illusion, it's going to be in autumn. It's still the year of the election. So I was thinking, well, at least that one's gone. And yet Rishi Sunak came out with it. He popped up. He wasn't heard of yesterday. No. He wasn't about yesterday. Again, day of the by-election, didn't even tweet for people to go out and vote. No sign, complete radio silence. So you think to yourself, I keep saying he's not an asset. They know he's not an asset because they don't dispatch him. Keir Starmer was out and about campaigning this week. Rishi Sunak, no, not. If those constituencies got a visit from him at all, it was when he was flying overhead in his RAF plane or helicopter. But he came out with this midterm blues crap today, and it's like you're having a laugh. Midterm. It's the year of the election. And then David Frost, he's popped up, hasn't he? I will have more to say in Telegraph later. In other words, go and pay to read whatever crap I'm writing later. But he says, but in brief, these by-elections show the same story as previous ones. That includes when he was a member of the government, by the way, because they were losing them then.
Yeah.
Former Conservative voters are simply not coming out and voting Conservative. No shit, Sherlock. The Labour vote isn't going up. Well, like I've just said, it's not just that the proportion of the vote went up. In Wellingborough, the actual number of votes was higher yesterday than in the general election. Turnout yesterday was about 38%, I think I could check it. In Wellingborough, I think it was about 60 odd % in the general election.
Yeah.
Where is it?
But it's always going to be lower in a by-election. Of
Oh,
course
yeah.
it is.
64.3%. So the actual number of votes that were cast was greater. I mean, in the general election in 2019, Labour got 13,737 votes. Yesterday, they got 13,844 votes.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's utterly ridiculous. And bear in mind, the reason why by-elections are a lower turnout, because there's a lot of voters, a hell of a lot of voters, when they go to the polls in a general election, they're voting for the government. That's it. That's what they want to vote for, the government. So obviously a lot of these people don't turn up to a by-election because you can't vote for the government then. This isn't going to make any difference to the government. Yeah. It's just a bit of a humiliation for them. It makes no difference to who's in government. So then he goes on, to get voters back, we need to shift to a more conservative policy, by which he means further away from conservative policy. On tax and spend, immigration, net zero, public sector reform and more. It's late, but not yet too late. But again, it's like, he was literally a member of the cabinet when they started this run of 10 by-election losses.
Yeah.
No mention of that.
I'm just going to run through the incredible super chats that have come in. Johnny Copperhead, honestly, mate, you don't need to donate any more today, but thank you for the extra £2. He says, my last £2, lol. So thank you, Johnny. Absolute legend. Also a legend, Captain Bart Roberts, thank you for the £5 super chat, saying my last 5. You don't have to give me the last bit of your money, but thank you. I really appreciate it. Really kind, really generous. Nicholas Fleece over in Switzerland has dropped in 10 Swiss francs. Thank you very much. Love your videos. So thank you very much for that super chat. And also Attila D6. Thank you very much. Attila, you've been around on this channel for ages, haven't you? I remember your name coming up years ago. I think I can afford a £5. Thank you very, very much, Attila. Really, really appreciate it. So yes, the copium is strong. I just thought it was funny, like Rees-Mogg just sort of, he reminded me of the Monty Python's Black Knight. It's just like there with no arms and no legs.
Well, they're coming for him. His seat is very, very vulnerable.
Yes, it is. Oh dear, how sad. Never mind. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of them. Do you think that there's going to be some of the big names that are going to resign, or not resign, but just not stand again?
Stand down. It's difficult to say because they'll want to try. If they're a big name, it's because they're ambitious and they'll want to try. Some already have announced they're stepping down, like Sajid Javid. But
70 of them, isn't there?
Well, I mean, in terms of big names. But some of them want to be there because there's going to be this ideological battle. There's the far right who want to take over and turn. Like one thing Jacob Rees-Mogg said today was, again, plugging we need to sort of win over the people who are going to vote Reform UK. He said there's a lot of common ground between the two parties. And it's like, well, yeah, but there's not supposed to be, is there? So there's the group who want the Conservative Party to become Reform UK, to morph into it. And then there's going to be the others who absolutely want the opposite of that. So I think that's why they're sticking around. I think that's why, I don't think Theresa May has announced she's stepping down, for example. And you would think someone with her, she's obviously not going to be big in government again. Is she doing a bit of a Ted Heath where she just stays there out of spite? There's no real need to, because her tormentor has gone anyway. So people like that may be sticking around because they want to fight for the party and to make sure that they win. So I think a lot of the big names will stick around because they want to shape the future of the party.
Yeah.
But we will see. But a lot of them will have no say in the matter. They will just lose their seats.
Yeah. And it's going to be very satisfying. A lot of people in the chat talking about how good it's going to be to watch Rees-Mogg lose his seat, if that's what happens. And he's in a pretty safe Somerset seat. Bath South, I think he is. He's one of the Bath MPs. There is no such thing as a Tory safe seat anymore. No. Which, can we talk about this? One of the things that the voting reform group that we're both part of would like to see is no more safe seats. Well, for the Tories now, there are no more safe seats. So
If
do you think
people can
it's
see
kind of
that,
undermining our argument a little bit against first past the
well,
post?
that's one. This is a particular election. It's like a moment in time for one particular party. Whereas I think the general idea is you don't want any MP to feel safe,
Yeah.
or any candidate. You want every candidate to feel that they constantly need to be connected to their voters.
Keep up the game. Keep up their game. It's true. This is like when some people get into a relationship or get married, and then they just go, "Oh, I can't be bothered trying anymore," and they put their feet up and go, "Right, you can do everything for me." And yeah, the MPs are the same. I think a lot of people take the path of least resistance, don't they? So if no one's forcing them to sort of keep
Yes.
up their game, then they shall not.
Well, I mean, there
Bit of
is, to be
effort.
fair with MPs, there is a pull on them that you don't get in other jobs, in that there's their constituency work, which is really important. And then there's the national, thinking about the national and international picture. So
Yeah,
I do understand how some MPs will have more of a natural inclination towards their constituency work, and some of them will have more of a natural inclination towards focusing on the bigger picture. But, you do need them to be constantly having to at least make sure they're paying attention to their constituency,
yeah,
so they
yeah,
don't go fully just thinking of the national picture,
yeah.
particularly as some of them want the nation to be broken up and sold off or given away, as the case may be.
So have you been doing some bets today?
Yes.
You've been doing a bit of gambling on the
So
side.
I won't plug this one too much. I mean, the Wellingborough one I was quite happy to talk about because that was going to be won all day long. So that's paid out, and I've now sunk my winnings into an election. It's actually very generous on Betfair. The betting odds were very generous. They didn't make me pick May the 2nd. I could pretty much. It was like spring. So I thought anytime between April and June. I thought, yeah, I'm having that. It was like 7-1 odds.
That's not bad.
That is
That's
very
not
good
bad,
odds.
is it?
They may have shortened now. I don't know. I think that's a very generous. That's very generous odds. So, although I wasn't intended to put a bet on the timing of the election, I absolutely have. Isaac Levidow has been in and out of Downing Street several times a day all week. And he is the general election strategist, right? And you can't say that he's been in and out talking about Kingswood or Wellingborough because it's the by-elections this week, because you might automatically say that, oh, well, he's also talking about the Tories weren't trying in those constituencies. People were noticing on the ground. The Tories just weren't out there. Rishi Sunak wasn't out there. So it's fairly obvious Isaac Levidow was not in and out of Downing Street all week talking about these by-elections. No, he's talking about the general election. And why would he be in and out of Downing Street multiple times a day all week for a general election that's going to be in like 8 months' time? Don't talk shit.
Yeah. Just a big shout out to Andrew Greenland. Thank you very much for the €5 super chat. Always happy to get euros, by the way. Very happy today. Always enjoy your content, especially today. So everyone's feeling a little bit of a lift from the gloom that is knowing that the Tories are still going to be in charge for at least the next few months. But yeah, to go back to the betting thing, were you talking about the fact that you can't actually place a bet on some of the things like the Tories winning the next election? It's just about how much they're going to lose by?
I'm not sure about that. You couldn't place bets on the by-elections this week on any results. I mean, I did place one on Wellingborough when it first came out because I knew. Yeah. I mean, the odds were going to be crap anyway from the start. But there were no. I think someone was saying one of the betting companies, one of the bookies, would only give you odds on the margin of win for the by-elections.
Yeah.
Now you can still, I think, I don't know. I don't do a lot of betting. I'm making me sound like I'm putting bets on all the time. I hardly ever bet. It's just that there's so many sure things these days. Like the first political bet I ever put on, it was actually in 2019. And it was on the fact that Boris Johnson would extend the Article 50 process. I won a bit out of that. Yeah, I had decent odds on that.
It's quite good.
That's my first political bet.
Do you know what? We should do a show. We should do a show.
We should not encourage people to gamble.
We encourage people to gamble their money on this stuff because you know what does well on the internet. Don't gamble. It's very naughty. But like crypto and stuff like that always does really well. Crypto content. So this will be like political crypto content, I guess, because it'd be like, here's our top tips. Graham and Phil's top tips for Ladbrokes.
On no circumstances take any betting advice from me. I will never offer it. I've just happened to
Hashtag not
mention
legal
I put
advice.
bets on. Do not follow my lead. I am betting an amount of money, although it's a lot of money, is easily if I lose it, it's not a big deal for me.
Nick in the chat's saying has been inspired to reach out to their local Labour Association to volunteer for canvassing when the next election comes. Any tips, Graham? As said, you're out later. I'm in Newark. Nick, if you are a Labour Party member, you sign up and you'll have your constituency on your form, and you'll end up getting emails that say, we're going to be doing canvassing on Tuesday or whatever, and at this particular place. And you just turn up. I think there was
you'll have a handler for you if you just tell them you've never done it before. You'll have a handler who'll you'll just team up for a buddy up for a bit before you let loose on your own.
Yeah. But
one thing they're always looking out for anyway is just people to hand out leaflets, just shove them through the door and run away.
Yeah. Someone's saying gambling bad. Yes, I know. I'm joking. Crypto content. You hate crypto. Yes, I hate crypto because it's gambling, but it's dressed up as though it's a surefire thing that will definitely make you lots of money. And therefore, since it's gambling, it's kind of a bit more like a pyramid scheme. And the only people who make money are the people who make loads of money, pretty much. And the people who talk about it on the internet and say, buy all this crypto stuff. Keep watching my videos. Oh, come on. Nicholas has got the best title there. Get Rich Quick with Phil and Graham. If you knew how to get rich quick, mate.
No, I'm going to say we're sort of trying to argue against people voting for those who claim they will make you rich overnight with no drawbacks or trade-offs.
Yeah,
risk.
And
same with Brexit. Vote Tory, vote Brexit. It was always the same thing. It was literally I'm going to make you rich and there's no risk. That's their pitch every time, and people should stop falling for
it. So there was something in the news about them loosening regulations in the workplace so that you have to inhale dangerous chemicals today, which is nice because this is a Brexit win, obviously. That the regulations are being changed.
Yes, well, it is for people like Jacob Rees-Mogg who want us to go back to the Victorian era, where, for example, Isambard Kingdom Brunel, brilliant engineer though he was, regularly killed his workers and just got another one.
Yes. Yeah. It's pretty bad. So government priorities on chemical regulation. They're going to ease some of the regulations to make life a little bit more dangerous for people who have to do these jobs.
Yeah, and it doesn't help any business, because now it just means that those who want to trade with, for example, the EU, have now got to come up with more paperwork to prove that they are not lowering their standards as allowed by the batshit government we have.
Yeah,
because it's all right people saying, oh, well, anyone who needs to export, they'll obviously just maintain those higher standards for that market. Yeah, but they've got to prove it. Like, if there's a legal requirement in the British market to maintain those standards, the EU sort of accept it, because that means there will be British inspectorates who will make sure they're doing it. Whereas if legally in this country you don't have to maintain certain standards, there's no inspections in this market, which means all the inspections then have to take place at the border. So that means you need more paperwork and more checks.
Yeah,
that's ultimately what deregulation means harder to piss in exports.
Yes. Yeah, but I mean, it also means that we don't have other countries telling us what to do, so we can have sovereignty as we choke.
We didn't before. We told people what to do. France, Germany, and the UK were basically telling everyone else pretty much what to do.
Yeah,
which is why almost every single EU rule that was created at the time, while we were members, was either strongly supported or even concocted by the UK.
Yeah. But this is the thing, we talked about this before, but if you buy something made in Brazil and you're in Bolivia, the good chances are it'll have a CE mark on it, because it's the manufacturer has made it to European regulations in order to be able to sell that product anywhere in the world. Once you've got that CE mark, you can sell that everywhere. I don't think there's a single country in the world that the CE.
Well, there'll be there's the odd little wrinkle here and there. Some markets have different standards. Like, for example, you're not allowed to buy a Kinder Egg in America or haggis or anything like that. But generally speaking, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's old rules, isn't it?
Mm.
The haggis one is an old one because of lung, sheep's lung in
Yeah,
haggis, and the Kinder eggs one, it was because I think in the 1930s or whenever the law was passed, manufacturers were putting sweets in chocolate bars, and some kid ate a chocolate bar and
yeah,
choked to death on the sweet, and they're like, "Oh, let's
yeah.
not put toys in chocolate bars."
Mm.
Yeah, but like in a chocolate egg, where it's obviously you're not going to eat the whole thing, it's too big to fit in your mouth. Yeah, it does seem a bit mad that they have that. What was the other thing that I
But
saw the
that's
other
it.
day?
That's all you get is just the odd, the
Yeah.
like niche little examples of where
Oh,
it wouldn't,
yeah.
because by and large, European standards are the highest or equal to the highest in the world.
I was watching the Legal Eagle on one of the
Oh
other
yeah,
YouTube channels, and
I'm
he was
familiar with
talking
that
about
one. Yeah.
mad American laws, and one of them was, I think, South Carolina, where it is illegal to play pinball if you're under 18 years old. Would somebody think of the children?
I
That's
bet
still
it's
a law.
I bet
It's
it's
still a
legal to
law.
marry them under that age, though,
Oh
in
God,
South
yeah.
Carolina.
There's I think there's some states where there is no minimum age you can get married as long as your parents consent. It's just so
That'd
wrong.
be Mormon country, Utah, and places like that, I
Yeah,
suppose, wouldn't it?
yeah. It's pretty disgusting that still goes on. I mean, America is a strange place. It really is. I
Everywhere's
mean,
strange to everywhere, though. Like,
well,
there's some
come
people
on.
do whole YouTube channels on like peculiarities of their own country, because then Americans will watch it and go, "You're all just weird."
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, aside from the fact they don't have kettles or Fortnites
And they don't
or
understand why we
Boxing Day
have washing up bowls.
or maternity leave. But yeah, there's a few things in America where if you played a game of like, is this Saudi Arabia? Is it America? Here's the thing that's happened, or here's the law.
Mm.
9 times out of 10, you'll pick Saudi Arabia. You'll be like, oh, that's definitely Saudi Arabia. And like, nope, it's America. And you're like, how could a country that is so free and liberal in other ways
Because
is
it's not.
so conservative in others, like religiously
Because
conservative?
America's split. It's not split down the center. It's all over the place. But
It's easy
it's
then to me.
like you've got huge differences in characteristics in different states.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's vast. It's a vast country. It's going to have huge. It is going to have huge differences.
Facts are saying the drinking age is 21 in many states. Yeah,
Yeah,
I thought
yeah.
that came in like, I don't know, World War One or something. It didn't. It came in the 80s. The 80s, Phil. Up till that point, each state could just have a drinking age of whatever they wanted it to be. So some of the places it was 21, some it was 25.
Yeah.
Some like literally you could not buy alcohol. That's still the same case today. It's not statewide, but there are dry towns in America where you can't get any alcohol. But that blows my mind. It's like you can go and fight for your country. You do a 3-year tour of duty in Afghanistan, and you come back and you can't have a pint. And they ID everyone, no matter how old you look, which is really weird. Each state in America has diverged somewhat in culture too, says Siskin Edge. Yeah, but there's also, and we'll probably talk about this more on an upcoming episode of the Geoscope with me and Ollie Bowler Hatman on Tuesday nights at 9 o'clock. But in America, there is some convergence in states like Texas, which really do look like they're going to flip to Democrat pretty soon. Probably not this election, but the way the demographics are going, it's what's this? Brian is saying in the chat, telling a Yorkshireman that America is strange. Behave yourself, Graham. Is Yorkshire more strange?
Everywhere's strange to others.
Have you got a ferret in your pants, or is that Lancashire?
I don't know. Ferrets are very nice, though. I knew someone who had a couple of ferrets. They're very, very pleasant, very friendly creatures. But I was never encouraged to put it down my pants now.
Where's that? Graham, you can always buy booze in dry counties. You just need an intro. Yes, well, I've bought booze in dry countries. Never mind dry counties. I've managed to get booze in Iran, Kuwait. Where else have I got booze? That's actually a dry country. Saudi Arabia. Don't tell them. Don't tell them. But yes, Nick says, I once had a very strange urge to join an Amish community. Yeah. So anyway, back to the by-election results. So the fact that Labour's had a bit of a bad week with this couple of
you
candidates.
Say so. It hasn't, though.
Well, that's what that was going to be my point, Phil. Like, they've had a bad week. and it didn't really seem to touch the sides when it came to people voting in this
The
election.
thing is as well, even the specific polls, because you can look at like an overall poll and there's all sorts of factors into it. There was a specific poll done on, did Labour handle the Rochdale incident well? And most people said yes. And that's, you might be surprising to people who are paying attention because it took them a good couple of days. But bear in mind, most people didn't even hear about it until Labour had already taken the action. So from their point of view, it wasn't taking that long. And if my issue, I mean, what Labour really should have done on that Sunday, if they weren't going to make a decision on that day, and it was a fairly obvious decision to make, I'll still say, they should have at least said, well, look, we've got these claims in the Mail on Sunday. They haven't actually published the recordings. They've just reported on them. Forgive us for not automatically believing the Mail on Sunday. We're going to investigate. That would have given them a day or even 2 days, if necessary, to do what they wanted. And it still would look like taking decisive action. But they didn't do that. But anyway, it doesn't matter because the polling that came out said that most people and an overwhelming number of Labour supporters thought that Labour handled it well.
Yeah.
So it made no. It's the same with the green investment thing the week before. It was, there were more people thought they handled it well than didn't, and and the thing is as well, even if Labour did have a slightly sticky moment, and neither of these really, they were on the Twitter sphere, they were amongst people who are very politically aware, but they weren't amongst the general public. But even if they did, I mean, the story of last week was Rishi Sunak picking on grieving parents of a murdered teen. And the story of this week is recession and the Tories getting thumped in 2 more by-elections. That's ultimately the story. It doesn't matter how the mainstream media try and cover it. That's what people know has happened. Recession, more thumpings in by-elections.
And the mainstream media seem, well, the Tory press, they seem to be more out of the
they
sync
are out of
with
step,
the public the public sentiment than ever. Like they are just they're living in cloud cuckoo land. I did a Daily Fail yesterday about the Daily Express.
Yeah, that was a good
saying
one.
now's the time to cut taxes, and the Mail ran with the same headline today. Like
Was
literally,
it I saw one of them had.
the Mail did it as well.
It was the Mail. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Big in red
Absolutely
letters.
bonkers.
Now be bold and go for big in red letters. Tax
Yeah.
cuts, Mr. Hunt. But the way Mr. Hunt is going to have to do these tax cuts is by, and they're openly saying this, by another round of savage austerity.
Yeah.
It's like you cannot think of anything better designed to lose you more votes, because polling keeps saying that the public do not want taxes cut at the cost of public services. In fact, quite a lot, and it's not even a particular trap for Labour. They will be cautious about it, of course, but it's not a particular trap for Labour because most of the people who say they're going to vote Labour will actually accept tax rises if it means some public investment again. Not that will be necessary. Just close the tax loopholes and make the rich pay their not higher rate of tax, even just the rate of tax they're supposed to be bloody well paying.
But I mean, this whole thing about cutting tax, it seems like a really infantile way of dealing with a serious, complex problem. It's like, everything will get better if we cut tax. It has never, ever worked in the history of the world that, taxes have been cut and suddenly everyone's richer. I mean, a few people get richer.
Yes.
Yeah. And it might actually bring up the average because some people are fabulously wealthy.
Yeah.
But I was just reading a report about child poverty in the Northeast, and it's absolutely shocking. This is a report that's come out today, and it was commissioned by a cross-sector advisory group under Baroness Hilary Armstrong, and they found that more than a third of all babies, children, and young people in the Northeast are living in poverty.
Mm.
It's grinding, and the idea that they're going to be helped by tax cuts for the rich.
Yeah. And as I say, these tax cuts, because the economy has not grown last year, have to come as a result of cuts to spending, and they've already pared it to the bone. The reason why the rate of tax skyrocketed a few years ago was, yes, it largely accelerated by COVID, but it was ultimately because they'd already cut public services down to the bone, and they had no choice but to actually just put taxes up, whether by stealth or more blatantly. But they had no choice because they've already, their attitude is tax cuts for the rich, but that means more taxes for the poor, but they cannot squeeze people anymore. So, but now they're going to try, they're just going to talk about more cuts.
Yeah, yeah, and it's something that I touched upon when I was doing my moments of truth yesterday. Is the fact that things like austerity, squeezing the poorest people, is the stupidest thing you can do if you want to stimulate your economy.
Yes.
Because these are the people who spend their money in their own community. They're not buying a private jet from Lear in America. They're not, they're not.
Or just
they're not
sticking
putting
it in
their
the bank.
money.
For some of these people, they're not even spending it. It's going offshore, but it's not even doing anything there. It's just like, I keep saying, it's just like playing a trading game on a computer. There comes a point where it's just a number, it's just a score going up. They're not changing their life.
No. But that wealth is being taken out of the UK by the rich people who are putting it in the Cayman Island bank accounts, Swiss bank accounts, taking it off to Monaco. That is wealth, that is British wealth that's been generated in this country, taken off people who are working. And then we see that British Gas has had a 10 times increase in their profits at a time when people can't afford the heating bills.
943% increase in profits in 1 year. And they haven't produced anymore. In fact, their profits actually should have gone down because there's a lot of people who've had to cut back.
Yeah.
So actually, I ought to find the data at some point when I've got time. It wouldn't surprise me if they, as a company, have been less productive in terms of what they're selling, in terms of the volumes they're shifting of electricity and gas, effectively. Wouldn't surprise me at all, but it's certainly not a massive increase. We haven't suddenly been consuming more energy over the last year, but so to have done that, and the government have allowed that. They should have taken, and people, I did a video on this myself, and people will say, "Oh, but it's because they're doing it to protect the smaller energy companies." It's like, no. First of all, if your privatized energy model requires this to happen, it's a shit model. Change it. Yeah. But secondly, if you're going to stick with this model, you apply windfall taxes. If you think, oh, we need to do this for the smaller companies, okay, you apply the windfall taxes to the ones who get the windfalls, and then you use that money to make permanent energy payments to people on low incomes until the market sorts itself out again.
Yeah.
You don't let them keep those profits. They're not part of their business model.
Well, I mean, the whole thing
don't let them keep it.
It needs to be renationalized. It's clear that
it is, but it's one of those things. Like, again, you look at polls, you can find all sorts of polls that will say, oh, people are in favor of nationalizing this, nationalizing that. But then when you ask another poll, would you want to pay for it? If you talk about the trade-off, it's always no. That's the reality. That's the reality I keep trying to explain to people. It's the same with Labour, because this came up again recently in another poll with Labour's green investment. People were in favour of the policy, but then it was said, if it puts your taxes up, in favour, and all of a sudden it was like, oh no. Even though it wouldn't, but if you tell people that, all of a sudden, no. So you have to do nationalisation slowly, otherwise you will just lose the next election. But whilst you persist with a privatised model, you must at the very least make sure there's no piss taking.
Yeah. But I don't think that I think the Tories are just in fire sale mode now. They know they're on the way out.
Yes, they
You'd
do.
have to be pretty bloody deluded to think they're going to win the next election.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think they're just grabbing whatever they can on the way out and trying to salt the earth so that Labour have an absolute nightmare of the first few years of government where the economy is not going to grow because it can't. It's got nowhere. It's got nothing to grow into. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
and they've absolutely. I mean, Brexit was the biggest salting of the earth ever, and yet the Tories also did that themselves effectively.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But what was the thinking there? I mean, like, Brexit was obviously going to be showing, turning up in people's lives and making it horrible for them.
It was all a short-term calculation.
In 2019, though, the Tories thought they were going to be in for another 10 years.
Yeah.
They had no idea things were going to turn around this quickly. And so that, 5 years later, they're facing not just defeat, but annihilation. So what was the plan?
That was the plan. There was going to be no more democracy. I mean, you could see that in the 2019 manifesto. There's stuff in there, like They were going to remove the independence of the judiciary even. It was all going to be politically appointed. So they haven't even gone as far as their 2019 manifesto suggested.
Yeah.
It was... but, you know, people keep bringing up, for example, here it is again. Emily Thornberry wrote this in 2019, just after that general election. She was on foot. I'll be honest, I didn't have her confidence, but she said, Emily Thornberry wrote, and this was just days after the last general election, when everything looks like it was absolutely cataclysmic for Labour. She said, let's be clear, this was always going to be the Brexit election, the first genuine single-issue election in 119 years. Back then, in 1900, the Tories were cynically capitalising on their early success in the Boer War to try to win another thumping majority over the Liberals. It was also Labour's very first election, blah, blah, blah. And if you're a Labour voter seized with gloom or a Tory gleaming with complacency, just remember that in 1906, 6 years after that last single-issue election, the Liberal opposition won a majority of 124, with the Tories losing 246 seats. Why? Because the Tories were totally divided over trade policy and because their single issue of the Boer War had turned into a disaster. Will history repeat itself now as the Tories grapple with the reality of getting Brexit done? Well, history has a tendency to do that. And when the next election comes, I'd certainly like Labour to have a leader and team in place with a strategic vision to foresee and exploit Johnson's failings.
That's phenomenal. So Emily Thornberry wrote that in 2019.
Yeah. 2019, just days after the election.
I like Emily Thornberry, I've got to say. GOJ, thank you very much for the super chat. Thank you very much. Did you see the Gary Stevenson interview on Politics Joe this week? Basically, the only way to save the country is to have wealth tax to rebalance. I completely agree with Gary Stevenson on that. I've seen some clips from the Politics Joe interview, and I'm trying to make time to watch it because I've seen a lot of clips of Gary Stevenson on TikTok and stuff, and he does speak a lot of sense in a way that people can relate to. He doesn't sound like your typical posh rich boy, but he's made a lot of money in his life, and he just sees the unfairness and inequality out there, and he wants to do something about it. So, you know, Godspeed to him. But yeah, I'd recommend that for people who I haven't seen it yet, but I presume it's pretty good. But I think he's right. A wealth tax. I don't know how you would police that though.
Well, I mean, my issues with wealth tax are I'm philosophically, I don't think it's necessary, other than at the moment it is because wealth's been allowed to accumulate into too few hands. So I'm fully in support of it now. It's just politically, it's very tricky. So it's not. So I really support people arguing for it, but you need to not persuade the politicians. At the moment, politicians can't do it. You need to persuade the people that it's needed. And the reason why you can't persuade politicians at the moment is it's because it's a little bit like inheritance tax, which is a form of wealth tax in itself. There's way more. There's about 10 times as many people think they'd pay it than actually do. That's the issue. A lot of people don't understand where they are in the wealth scale. So the other problem with wealth tax is that, so in terms of, it's not a new reason not to do it, by the way, but in terms of what you'd raise, it's never as much as you think, because you'll base the calculations on the wealth that we know exists and we could tax reasonably. Admittedly, we can't just go to Jacob Rees-Mogg's house and nick off the West Wing, but there are still wealth taxes you could apply. But that's because they're open about it, because it's not being taxed. As soon as you decide to tax it, these are people who've got very clever accountants and will go, right, this is what we're going to do, so you don't have to declare all this wealth instantly.
But if it's bricks and mortar, I mean, it's a bit harder than, you know, the wealth
they know that.
Stocks and shares.
That's why the richest people in the world, whenever people moan that they basically pay no tax, I don't actually have money. I don't have any money. It's all in this, and it's all in this. And it's
investments.
It's all these assets. So I don't actually have money. Stop whining. And it's like, yes, we are still paying less money. You're still paying less tax than a pissing nurse. Have you got less money than a nurse? No, hand it over. But that's what they do. So you know, it's not a simple thing. My worry with people talking about certain things like wealth tax, stuff like that, and I say I do want people to talk about it, but they should be making it clear it's not like a simple thing. Because my worry is when people say, oh, we should do that, and it makes total sense to people, and then they assume that because it's not happening, the politicians are there's all some nefarious scheme at play, and they're all as bent as each other. It's like, no, you haven't got a plan for it. And there's too many people think it will apply to them to be electorally useful, but it is worth talking about it all the time. Because the bottom line is, if we want investment, and you cannot, it's like Labour keeps saying, oh, you can't just spend your way to growth. No, you can't, but you also can't just legislate your way to growth either. You do need to spend. Any business that wants to expand has to spend. I've had to spend in order to grow the channel, for example, at some point. Admittedly, I bought things I didn't absolutely need, like that big saw. Oh, you can't see it. Never mind. But you need you do need to invest. You do need the money. And where's the money going to come from? It's not coming from growth. There is no natural growth. We didn't grow last year. The economy did not grow last year. If it grows this year, it's only in comparison with an economy last year that didn't grow. So, I mean, some Brexiteer was going on today on Twitter. Oh, the January figures look really good. Oh, they're much better. Oh, we're probably not even in recession anymore. And it's like, yeah, that's probably true. But if anyone understands anything about trade, it's ridiculous that January should have better trade figures than December.
Yeah.
January is when trade drops off a cliff.
Yeah.
That's supposed to be your worst month for trade. The most, I mean, there'll be some businesses do well. Gyms will do quite well in January. But by and large, the economy falls down a hole in January and then it clambers out sometime in spring. So to have a January that's looking really good by comparison with December just shows you in what a hole we're in. So we're not going to get extra tax revenues from growth. No. So we can only get it by raising more tax revenues. Now, we're not going to raise the rate of any tax because instantly then the Tories will say, oh, they're going to charge you more taxes. And you're already in a cost of living crisis. So Labour then just have to focus on closing tax loopholes.
But that can make all the difference.
Yes,
I mean,
it can.
The rules are there already, and the loopholes are known. Of course, they're known because accountants use them every day so that their wealthy clients don't pay any tax. So it's not like they've got some like mystery magic spell that no one else can have control of this secret knowledge. They know it's there because a lot of Tories use it themselves. Don't forget, pretty much every Tory MP is a millionaire. Every single one.
Mm.
That's a lot of millionaires all meeting up and deciding policy for poor kids in the Northeast who can't afford shoes. Yeah. And it's another world. It's an absolute, they when we talk about, when you were talking about how, on one of the Morning Brew shows this week, you were saying how wrong it was to just say, oh, look, all Muslims vote this way.
Yeah,
he'll lose the Muslim vote when a lot of Muslims vote for the Tories anyway, and some vote for the Lib Dems. And some
because
vote
they're
for
just
Labour.
people at the end of the day. They're not one-dimensional objects in a game.
But one of the things in that is that all their interests don't align. The interests of someone who's doing quite well and just happens to be Muslim is going to be very different from someone who's really struggling in a house, full of kids, who also happens to be Muslim, in a deprived area. Yeah, but when you look at sort of the economic outlook of what you want the economics to look like in the country, the people who vote for the Tories are generally, if you want to generalize them in any way, shape or form, rich. I mean, you've got to be pretty fucking stupid to vote for Labour.
Well, there are a lot of people who do that as well. Rich. I mean, 2019, they all came out the woodwork.
Yeah. But I mean, that was on a single issue, wasn't it? That was on Brexit. That was on racism.
Well, I mean, there were 3 issues really, but ultimately Brexit was the driving factor.
Yeah. But no, what I mean is when we talk about a group of society and we say, look, there's a particular cohort who are more likely to be, who are more likely to vote Tory. But it's not just about the fact that they're more likely to vote Tory. They're also more likely to be in a position of power, whether it's company bosses or whether it's executives of TV or films, music, whatever whatever industry you're in. The people at the top have got a lot of money and therefore they've got a vested interest in keeping that money. And that gives them a lot of power. So it's kind of like a bit of a money power cycle. I can understand why Labour don't want to scare them into using their immense power. It's not just their votes. They don't care about their votes. There's not enough of them to care about the votes. It's the power that they've got. It's the fact that they own all the newspapers and just talk TV and Gammon Box News and all this nonsense.
Well, things like that. I mean, GB News they could sort out overnight by just sorting Ofcom out. The rest of it is going to need more carefully planned regulations. And I just hope they're up for that, because they must see that it's in their own interest.
Really?
They have to. Well, who knows? But they really ought to. They ought to see that.
But then that does have a soul, Phil. A soul, I tell you.
Can't
QA library.
Politics.
Leave your souls at the door, boys and girls. QA library, thank you very much for the £5 super chat. That's really generous. Thank you. Really kind. How is Labour going to combat Labour going win and voters staying at home? 1997 was a worry like this, but lower turnout, more damage reform does to Conservatives. So, I mean, is a low turnout in the next election likely?
There's a couple of people said so, but I've not seen a single person say why they think that. Like John Curtis tried to go. He tried to say, oh, it's because they're both boring. Like Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer. I thought, well, first of all, you're not basing that on any data then, are you? Because Theresa May was clearly more boring than Boris Johnson, yet turnout was lower in 2019. The Labour leader was the same, but the Conservative leader was the more showy, charismatic Boris Johnson in 2019. Turnout was lower. So, but what I will say is, if it is lower turnout, it's because of disaffected Tory voters.
Well, yeah.
Labour will get more vote. I think Labour will get more votes than they did in 2019.
Yes.
So if there is a lower turnout, it'll be collapse of the Tory votes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there were a lot of Labour voters who stayed at home last time because the election was in the middle of freaking winter and their leader was uninspiring.
Well, the other thing is, I mean, in terms of the number, if you compare it historically, it was not bad. It was just a massive drop on 2017. But in 2017, there was a massive boost because it was Greens and Lib Dems and people like that tactically voting to stop the Tory Brexit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and obviously they were none too impressed with Labour's Brexit position in 2019.
Yeah. Putting it mildly. Yeah. But I mean, I think that the same thing might happen in this election in that, yeah, you're right. It's if we do have a lower turnout, it's going to be because Tory voters just stay at home. And is that a bad thing? I mean, isn't that a vote? Not voting? Because I see it as a vote. I know you want people to turn up and spoil the papers, but I'm like, that no one, it's like voting none of the above, isn't it?
I would prefer people did that. I would prefer people turned up and just spoiled their ballot if they don't want to vote for a candidate. It's a sign of unrepresentative politics when so few people choose. But I mean, we'll wait and see. Who knows?
But isn't it a choice to not vote? Isn't it a choice?
Yeah, it is. But it's better. It could just be staying home. Could just be apathy. Whereas if you actually walk down the road, pick up a pencil, and just draw a big grumpy face underneath all the candidates, you've still voted. You just haven't voted for anyone. You haven't
voted for anyone, so the outcome is still the same.
But the turnout remains high. The turnout can be 100% with like a third of people not voting for anyone.
Yeah, but so what? How would that change anything? I mean,
because it shows that people are still engaging in the political process. They're just not happy with any of the available options. Their vote is up for grabs. They're saying my vote is up for grabs.
Okay. I'm not going to argue with that on that one. But yeah, Duke says that you play Warhammer and then, of course, you focus on statistics.
Well, I only play it very casually. I'm very bad at it these days, but it is very mathematical, yes.
I like boring in my politicians. Clement Attlee being a case, says Captain Bart Roberts. Yeah, and I think that one of the strengths of Starmer's team that he's put together is that they're incredibly boring.
Well, it's only a good thing if they're competent. We will wait and see. I've got confidence in some of them.
Oh, come on.
I'm not saying I've not got any confidence in others. Others that are just untested.
Who's untested? Who do you think might be a bit?
Well, the ones...
Name some names.
Well, Bridget Phillipson, I'll say, she's top of the list. She's not impressed me politically, but she may be a brilliant... she may be a brilliant Secretary of State, so we'll have to see. She's just not a good politician. Even when the schools are falling down, who was it who was getting most of the attention? Where's bloody streeting? So she couldn't even make herself known to the public when pissing schools were collapsing.
Fair enough. All right. Well, message to Labour.
There are
Sort that
others
out.
as well. I'm not saying they should all be like rodeo clowns. You need a few. You need a few that are, but as long as they're stunningly competent,
Yeah.
then that's fine. But that's what I mean by untested. I'm not saying that any of the shadow cabinet are intrinsically bad. Just some of them are not tested because they've not been in government before. So in a year or two's time, I'll be able to sort of judge them a bit better.
Okay, well, in the meantime, super chat from the Big Hon. Thank you very much, Big Hon. No complacency, stay on target, which you have to say in the Star Wars voice. I don't think there is any complacency coming across from Labour. And talking to Labour MPs at the last conference, and I spoke to Wes Streeting and a few others, and yeah, there was no complacency in their attitude. I was like, oh, next year you might be in government. And they're like, oh, yeah, but, don't want to jinx it. Don't want to jinx it. So, yeah, which is good because some of us are old enough to remember the 1992 election when Labour were bouncing around at the conference saying, oh, we've got it in the bag. We've got it in the bag. And then they didn't.
Yeah, but they were basing that on empirical stuff. The data did not show that. And now it does.
Don't count your chickens before they hatch, or don't count your chickens before you have a statistician check how many chickens you've got.
Yeah,
give you a definite answer.
I mean, obviously, it's we need to wait for the elections because not a single vote has been cast for it yet.
Yeah,
in theory, footage may surface of Keir Starmer beating up live puppies every morning, but unless assuming that does not happen or anything like it. Then yeah, it's all very much. They can't be complacent because they're the ones who've actually got to do it. But I'm like, as I say, I'm like just watching my sports team. I'm in the stands, so I'm not actually directly influencing it. So I can sit back with my arms folded, go, yeah, I just got just a matter of time now before I get to watch them parade around the city with the trophy.
Yeah, and talking of polls, so the polls were pretty much spot on for these by-elections. If anything, they were a little bit conservative. Not for the Conservatives, I meant.
Well, I mean, the thing is, at the moment, the other thing we haven't talked about is Reform UK, and they're going, oh, it's brilliant. Yes. And it's but they're not. Their results were still shit. They were better than last year because their results last year were cataclysmic. These results for Reform UK, the results that come out today, but obviously for yesterday's by-election, show that their poll, they're still being inflated in the polls. If you look, for example, if we look at Wellingborough, even the Conservatives, both Labour and the Conservatives did slightly, it was round about what their national polling is. It's actually slightly more. Reform UK was again slightly more, but it should have been way more because it's a by-election. All those people who vote for the government, well, not all of them, because some of them will turn up to a by-election as well, but the ones who only want to vote for the government, they weren't there. So you concentrate the proportion of protest voters, people who will vote for different parties, or even ones who intend to vote Conservative. If there are, like Jacob Rees-Mogg reckons, if there are voters out there who want to vote for the Conservatives and probably will vote for the Conservatives, but they would like the Conservatives to be more like Reform UK, yesterday was the free hit because all the news, you couldn't get odds on Labour winning. That meant Labour were winning Wellingborough all day long. So a Conservative voter had free rein to turn up yesterday and vote Reform UK. They should have been getting more like 20%, really. I mean, if you think that in Wellingborough, let me go back here to 2015. So Wellingborough, this is the sort of place it is. In 2015, Labour came third. Now, you tell me who came. The Conservatives won it. Who came second, Graham?
Labour.
No, Labour came third.
Oh, sorry. The Lib Dems.
No.
Reform. The Brexit Party. UKIP. Oh, whatever.
This was 2015 when UKIP.
Oh, 2015.
So UKIP managed to get 20% in a general election. In a general election where all the people who want to vote seriously for the government turn out. They got 20% in a general election. Reform UK only got 13% in a by-election, with the Tories about as unpopular as a fart in a broken lift. And, so although Reform UK go, oh, it's brilliant, brilliant results, it's no, they're still shit results. It says that Reform UK have definitely improved their polling from last year, but it is not as high as most pollsters have it. Yeah, so so in other words, when you look at an MRP thing that says, oh, Labour are going to win this many seats, because some of it is based on Reform UK nicking Tory votes, it's probably not quite that high.
Yeah. Rather comment in the chat that using the old myth, the bullshit about the reason why Labour did so badly in the last election, Phil, was because they backed a second referendum. So just to address this, before they backed a second referendum in the EU elections that happened earlier that year, they got 14% of the vote.
Yeah.
So they shit the pants. They decided, oh God, we've got to do something about Brexit. We'll put this in. And believe me, the leader at the time needed really persuading to put that in.
Well, the thing is, it was
take that 14% up to 37% in the actual general election.
That was his thing. Because what pisses me off is when I read, hey, it was Keir Starmer. That was Keir Starmer's plan. No, it bloody wasn't Keir Starmer's plan. Jeremy Corbyn had promised the year before to adopt roughly this policy, not the batshit thing about, oh yeah, and then what we'll do is we'll present we'll negotiate a different withdrawal agreement with the EU in 3 months, and then we'll put it to the public, but we're not going to say whether we'll even support our own proposal. It was completely mad. But the general idea of offering a people's vote, effectively, Jeremy Corbyn agreed to the year before, but under certain conditions. Conditions were met in the early part of 2019, and he still didn't adopt it. He kept holding off. And that is, if he'd have adopted it ahead of those European elections, Labour would have cleaned up.
Yeah.
And the polling said they would have cleaned up, because there were polls done. Who would you vote if Labour adopt this policy? And then who will you vote if they don't? And it was like, night and day. Yeah. And then the actual proposal that Keir Starmer did present to conference in 2019, if people remember, some people have a shaky memory, Jeremy Corbyn, because the conference was going to vote for it, Jeremy Corbyn came out and persuaded them not to. So that was Labour's plan. That was Starmer's plan, sunk by Corbyn. And then what we ended up with was a fudge by Len McCluskey, because the other unions wanted a sensible Brexit strategy. But they also wanted to show unity, interestingly enough, amongst the big unions. And because Len McCluskey is a dickhead, he said, well, all right, I'll go along with this if we'll do this. And the rest of them looked at it.
That's a terrible Scouse accent, by the way.
That's not supposed to be a Scouse accent. That's just my dickhead accent. And
I disown him. Nothing to me.
And the rest of the unions prioritized a united front over a sensible position. So
why do you think this myth about the backing of a second referendum has become so persuasive and elements in the hard left? Do you think it's because they just have to find excuses? Is it their copium because they don't want to deal with the fact that the leader at the time was the most unpopular leader of a major
they can't believe
in democratic history?
It's not just that they can't believe he's thick as mince. They can't believe he was unpopular. They really can't. True. They think that most people, because for the many, not for the few, the many supporters. And then they didn't. It's like, it's your fault for speaking against him. It's like, no, I was doing videos urging people to vote Labour. I was desperate. I was trying to come up with all sorts of things to persuade people. It was you lot who were basically going around for years saying, oh, if you don't like what we're doing, piss off out of Labour.
And the other thing
Stop voting Labour. We don't want you voting Labour if that's your attitude.
During the campaign, there was a lot of talk about how crap Labour were last time they were in power, from the people who wanted you to vote for Labour. And it's like, we were terrible last time. We'll be much better this. Can we talk about how bad we were last time? Because I really want to waste your time for the next half an hour banging on and on about how terrible Labour were in government the last time they were in. Please vote for Labour. And that didn't work for some reason. I don't know why, but But we can be smug now because we can see how much that Labour have turned it around under Starmer.
BUF Mark saying there hadn't Jeremy Corbyn offered to negotiate a soft Brexit, including single market and customs union. No. What he offered to do was exactly what Nigel Farage offered to do, which was to negotiate access to the single market without being bound by the rules of the single market. It was just as much of a unicorn. If you go back and read the 2016 manifesto or the 2019 manifesto for Labour, it was just as much of a unicorn as what the Tories were offering. Only it was going to be different because it was going to be like what the Tories were offering, but with better workers' rights. And that was it.
Yeah.
But we were still going to get this free access to the single market, but without having to follow the rules.
All right, mate, if you say so.
But
Wouldn't
at the
everyone
same
just
time, it was
leave?
still a better offer than the Tories because it included eventually, too late.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, because it was too late. You'll say, oh, it was in time for the election. Yeah, but a lot of people didn't trust Jeremy Corbyn at that point. They, because he'd clearly been dragged kicking and screaming to meet his own promise, they
Yeah.
didn't trust him.
I'll ask you a question as well. Do you think that if Starmer somehow loses the general election, do you think the people in Labour who wanted us to give Jeremy Corbyn the benefit of the doubt into, I presume, a third general election, do you think they'll give Keir Starmer the benefit of the doubt?
No, of course not.
Okay.
If Starmer loses, all hell would break. I mean, Labour would actually just disappear up its own arsehole, I think. We keep talking about existential threat to the Tories. There is no such thing. There's too much money involved. Labour could actually just disappear as a political force. It is possible. They're on much shakier ground. They don't have an army of billionaires. It's not even an army, is it? It's just a room of billionaires supporting the Tories, but they'll always be there.
Yeah. Tufton
And it
Street
won't be there for Labour. Labour has to ultimately. I mean, it was a real crisis for Labour at the last election after that loss. They can't rely on union funding alone, and nor should they. They ultimately need lots of people to support them.
Yeah.
And you look at the activists going out now, because that's the thing. The Corbynists said, "Oh, Starmer will never get people to turn out for him. He'll never get them knocking on doors." You should see them.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a question there: where would Labour be now if Liz Truss hadn't blown a hole in the economy? Labour were already ahead in the polls when
They
that
were,
happened.
yeah. They wouldn't be as far ahead. Liz Truss definitely gave Labour a little bit of a boost. I mean, they may have crept up to the sort of current rating now. Because the thing is, if you think about the damage Liz Truss did, a lot of people think it's dealt with. If they're not paying attention to the size of their pension pot, they don't necessarily realise that there's lasting damage. Other than the fact that the Tories allowed her to lead them, and they could do it again. But yeah, probably the lead wouldn't be quite as high as it is now. But it doesn't need to be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I mean, the way things are at the moment, Labour look like, touch wood, they're going to get in the next election. If they don't, then the serious questions are going to have
76 days. Well, 77 days till we find out the results, I suppose.
Yeah.
And then that Cold War, that Cold War Steve image can come up. Where the one with Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner walking into number 10 Downing Street, and it's just like
absolutely trashed.
Wreck. Yeah.
That's the country, though, isn't it? It's not just Downing Street. It's the country has been wrecked by this Tory scum.
And the thing is, as well, there'll be things they don't know yet.
On both sides.
What's going to happen in the first few days of that Labour government is officials are going to sit down with Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves and show them what's actually. Because at the moment, although they are meeting officials to discuss policy and stuff like that, they're not being shown everything. As soon as they're in government, they're going to be shown the real state of the country.
Yeah. Mark Stone, thank you very much for the super chat. That's going to have to be the last one. We're not going to get into big arguments. Oh, sorry, pressed the wrong button. There you go, super chat. We're not going to get drawn into an argument about Starmer and whether he is a bad person, and whether someone's using the chat the term so-called human rights lawyer. This is a guy who went around the world literally getting countries to stop the death penalty. He saved the lives of hundreds, possibly thousands of people around the world. And yes, some of those people would be very bad, but some of them would have been innocent. And they're alive today because of Keir Starmer, which is more than I can think of any other MP doing. And it beats wearing a bloody sandwich board one day in the 80s and going,
And someone who's actually prosecuted war crimes. He actually knows what a war crime is. He knows what genocide is. He's prosecuted cases in The Hague, which is, again, those who are banging on about it know nothing. They don't know what genocide is.
If he doesn't win this election, mate, I'll drop him like a hot stone. There you go. That's as far as my loyalty goes. I won't be going on and on about him in 4 years' time. How he was robbed, he was. Stabbed in the back, he was.
Well, I don't know now. There will come a point where I do drop him, and he might not have even done anything wrong. He doesn't have to have shit the bed like Blair.
He might just look at you funny.
He just. It could just be that he does everything right as far as he can, and the Tories suddenly get a good con artist in charge. And at that point, as soon as Starmer is no longer an asset in the leadership position, I'll want him gone that day. As far as I'm concerned, Labour MPs are there to do a job, get Labour into government, deliver once they're in government, keep Labour in government. As soon as they are no longer a net asset towards those goals, go. Thanks very much for your service. Piss off. Don't let the door hit your ass on the way out. We need to be completely brutal about it. I do not care about the feelings of one person waged against tens of millions of lives.
Yeah. And people having to really grind now with the poverty and the level of
And even if we get to a point where, I mean, you could literally get to a point where poverty doesn't exist, which never will. But if we did, even then it would still matter, because if you let the Tories back in, it'll be coming back with a vengeance.
Yeah.
Oh, and if he doesn't introduce electoral reform and lets the Tories back in, then I will be chuntering about him in 10 years' time or 15 years' time, whenever it is, as much as I don't bang on all the time about Blair, but as much as I might about Blair for that and other things.
Yeah.
I will see him as a failed Labour. It doesn't matter what he introduces. If he doesn't introduce electoral reform, the Tories will destroy it all, and he will have been a failure of a Labour leader.
Yeah. But that is, you're not going to put the cart before the horse and say he's a bad man. I hate him. He smells. Before he even gets a chance to run for a general election, win a general election, and actually start making some policies happen. And then obviously the criticisms can start in earnest, because otherwise, and I've said this a few times, it's a bit like criticizing a movie that hasn't been made.
Yeah.
You just don't know. I mean, it might be. Did you ever see the film The Big Short? It's a fantastic movie about the credit crunch. Very good movie. That was directed by the same guy who did Anchorman, I think. Anchorman. Who did he go on to do like Chernobyl, the TV show Chernobyl?
I don't know.
That the
I don't
same
pay
guy?
attention to directors.
I don't know. It was just like, if you read it on paper that The Big Short was going to be directed by the director of Anchorman, you'll think, well, that's going to be shit, isn't it? Because it's not a comedy. But it was a really, really good movie. So don't judge. Don't count your chickens before they're hatched, obviously, but also don't judge a movie or a government until they're actually in government or the movie has been made, and then you can say, yeah, this is shit. But up till then, Starmer has got one job, and that is to win the next election. He seems to be doing a very, very good job of that at the moment, by the looks of things. Touch wood. Right. Anything else you want to say, or should we wrap it up for today?
No, I think we've gone through most of the things. It was a very bad day for the Conservatives, and yet Rishi Sunak managed to come out and explain how it was actually a disastrous result for Labour. So that's where they are at the moment. What these results show is that actually people don't want a Labour government. They want us to deliver our plan. That's what he said.
Bless his mad little cotton socks. Right. Anyway, are you going to be around tonight for the Labour Social?
No, I'm this is going to sound like the worst, crappiest lie ever, but I am actually going to the gym.
Okay, fair enough. Can't argue with that. All right, well, I'll see you later at 9 o'clock tonight if you'd like to join us for what will probably be a quite boozy and sweary edition of the Labour Social. But if you want to join us for that, you are very, very welcome to. Thank you for everyone who dropped in a chat there and everyone who dropped in a super chat, especially. And it's very kind, very generous of you. Really appreciate it. You keep this channel going. You keep it alive. Otherwise, I'll have to go and get a proper job in Starbucks, which I don't really want to do. I can't make coffee to save my life. Anyway, so until next time, I'll say thanks for watching. Remember to like on the way out. And until next time, hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.